Hello, I'm BMillzebub and welcome to my channel. Today's video took some thought because it's been so long since I've been Catholic and I had to take a couple of weeks to actually remember what bothered me when I was Catholic. But I'm going to answer the question here and now. Beyond Belief on Twitter asked the question.
And if you ask me, our days are numbered, falling one by one. It seems to me somewhere we blundered with blind faith and trust.
Ex-Christians, were there any particular teachings, doctrines, or practices that bothered you even when your faith felt the strongest? You might think that given my beliefs today, I'd have a problem with the church wanting to intimately interject itself into government. Maybe that I'd find the belief that wafers and wine turned into flesh and blood in a literal sense, but had this mental gymnastic called accidents of appearance to cover for it being so silly. Maybe the church's ass-backwards stance on homosexuality or the GSRM community in general, or possibly praying for the intercession of the Virgin Mary or saints on our behalf. The truth is, I accepted those things wholeheartedly and had no trouble whatsoever believing what I was taught. No, I took issue with the church's teachings on despair, or at least the church's teachings on despair as I understood them, because that's how I was taught. The smart place to start here is what the Catechism actually has to say in Catechism 2091. The first commandment is also concerned with sins against hope, namely despair and presumption. By despair, man ceases to hope for his personal salvation from God, for help in attaining it, or for the forgiveness of his sins. Despair is contrary to God's goodness, to his justice, for the Lord is faithful to his promises and to his mercy. I gotta tell you, I'm not really sure what it has to do with the first commandment. As we're all surely aware by now, the first commandment that the Catholic Church uses is, I am the Lord thy God, and you shall have no other gods before me. To feel despair doesn't mean you're putting another God ahead of the one in the Bible. It's not even putting one on the same level, because despair isn't even a God the Catholics believe in. Sure, say whatever you want about idolatry, but that's not the same thing. I am sure, however, that somewhere in polytheism there is a God of despair, but it's highly unlikely that a person feeling despair or is worshiping it, at least in my opinion. I certainly wasn't worshiping any God of despair when it was a thing I was feeling. As you do when you're in despair, I was feeling hopeless. Not about my salvation or whatever, that wasn't part of it at all. It was where I was in life. Even though I was only about 16 years old at the time, I didn't see a future for myself. So I was in despair. There was no religious motivation whatsoever. But the psychologist I was seeing at the time decided it was a good idea to try and turn my faith on me and guilt me for feeling despair. Because that's totally something you should do to another person, particularly when they're seeking your help. Same with my family, peers at church, and the leaders of my church's youth group. Maybe even a priest or two, I don't know. They all missed the mark of why I was feeling that way and tried to bludgeon me with religion to make it stop. I shouldn't need to tell you that it didn't work, but I'll say it all the same. But that's what the church has to say about despair. Now let's talk about how it was taught to me. At the risk of sounding somewhat redundant, what I was taught was that the church's teachings on despair was that it wasn't just the loss and hope of your salvation through God, but any feeling of despair at all. There was no nuance to it. It was just a club they could use to beat you over the head and counterproductively make you feel worse. Kind of like what my shrink did, actually. Although my shrink did try to make it work for the benefit of my counseling. He still missed the mark pretty big, though. Literally every attempt to use the church's teaching on despair backfired and made it worse. Fortunately, the people around me began to realize that quickly enough and backed all the way off from using it. Still pretty sure they kept judging me for it afterwards, though. I just always had a feeling that was the case. Can't say I really care anymore what pretty much any of them think of me. I'm an atheist activist that's trying to bring down their religion. I don't think they'd be fond of me anymore one way or the next. Oh well. What's your answer to Beyond Belief's question, though? What doctrines or beliefs bothered you about your previous faith while you felt your faith was strongest? Let me know in the description below, and follow the link to Beyond Belief's tweet in the description to answer there too. That'll do it for this one, though. If you enjoyed the video, please leave it a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and click the notification bell to get notified every time I upload a new video. If you feel so inclined to help me out, consider supporting me on Patreon, where you get early access to most videos for joining the $5 tier. Or consider getting me something from my Amazon wishlist. Every little bit helps, and every little bit is greatly appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter to keep up with all my comings and goings, and join my Discord for a chance to talk to yours truly. Take it easy, everyone, and I'll see you all in the next one.